Hello, this is Alan Fogelquist. This is September 21st, 2021. This is a short update for the Alan Fogelquist YouTube channels. The most notable historic event recently has been the United States exit from Afghanistan and a certain amount of disorder. The most surprising thing has been the rapid collapse of the pre-Taliban Afghan government and the collapse of the Afghan army and military forces that were trained for 2 decades by United States and NATO and other countries, and which were provided with millions or billions of dollars of support. And the most noteworthy aspect of the collapse has been the failure of the Afghan government and army and just the unbelievable failure to even try to resist the Taliban. So the American taxpayer and the American people made a very big miscalculation when they made an attempt to build an Afghan army and military force. It was a complete failure to understand Afghan history and Afghan society, and the fact that Afghanistan is historically it's historically a failed state. It's divided into all kinds of tribal and ethnic groups. There are different religions, and even within each ethnic group or tribal group, there have been multiple political factions, and anybody who understood anything about Afghanistan should have seen that it was not possible to build a cohesive Afghan army and a cohesive Afghan state, much less a democracy, out of the ingredients or the existing Afghan society, if you can even speak of an Afghan society. There was a division between the Tajik or Farsi Dari speakers in the north and northeast of Afghanistan, who made any place from 40 to 60% of the population. Then the Hazara Shiite groups in central Afghanistan, and closer to Iran are Dari-speaking but Sunni Afghans. In the south, there are Baloch minorities, and there's also been the long-term interference of Pakistani military and intelligence forces in support of the Taliban or extremist Pashtun religious factions that's been going on for about 20 years. The United States and Western countries, just as had been Russia and the Soviet Union, were at a total geopolitical disadvantage when it came to any kind of effective interference in this failed state. And so the current situation in Afghanistan is one that's been decades in the making, and several decades since the collapse of the pro-Soviet government, the failure of the Soviet intervention in Afghanistan. Both the United States, NATO, and the Soviet Union, based on their ideology and political cultures, made an attempt to modernize Afghanistan. The fact is that Afghanistan could not possibly be modernized other than by the Afghans themselves. And the future of Afghanistan will depend largely on what the Afghans themselves. And when I speak of Afghans, I'm not talking about any unified group. I'm actually talking about all of the peoples and factions and individuals who live in the internationally recognized territory of today's Afghanistan. So that's the most outstanding political event. This was not a failure of Joseph Biden and the Biden administration. The Biden administration might have managed things slightly better, but the conditions on the ground were so difficult that it's hard to imagine any possible American government, and certainly not the Trump administration. Now, one of the most outrageous things is that the Republicans and Trump are blaming Biden in a typically demagogical political fashion for a peace agreement which they themselves engineered and sponsored. Someplace along the line, the Trump administration decided that the Afghan government could be abandoned and chose to negotiate directly with the Taliban, leaving the existing Afghan government out of the picture. But whatever Trump or Biden administrations chose to do was an impossible task. Now, Pakistan has, for the last 30 years, has played an insidious role of supporting extremist groups in Afghanistan in a misguided effort to offset the influence of India. This policy has been terribly destructive, and Afghanistan and Pakistan has contributed to death and destruction in Afghanistan and towards the disastrous situation today. And all of its leaders of all Pakistan governments, from Zia al-Haq through Benazir Bhutto and Nawaz Sharif and now Imran Khan, has been totally hypocritical and totally disingenuous in its policy towards Afghanistan. And however, what's happened in Afghanistan is largely the product of Afghan history and the disunity within the society of the peoples living in Afghanistan. So there are many books and sources of information for people who sincerely intend to get a factual understanding of Afghan history and politics. And it has to be said that all of the political groups that form part of the coalition governments that were sponsored by the United States after September 11th, 2001, they've been a total failure. They're rife with corruption and incompetence, and they deserve to be condemned. And a large part of the mess in or the bulk of the mess in Afghanistan is due to them and the Taliban. The fanatical Taliban may succeed in establishing some kind of order in Afghanistan. They're not as extreme as the ISIS or Islamic State groups, and they may be susceptible to some moderating influence from Pakistan and China even. So let's get the story straight about Afghanistan and not play demagogical, partisan, idiotic politics in the United States and the idiotic blame game. That's a commentary on the most outstanding recent event that's happened over the last 2 months, the collapse of the Ashraf Ghani government. Ashraf Ghani's fleeing the country, and the Afghan military forces' total failure to resist the Taliban. The Afghan military was far superior in equipment and financial resources to the Taliban. It must be said that there was a geopolitical disadvantage for all of the Western powers, given the fact that Pakistan is the next door neighbor to Afghanistan, and given the fact that Pakistani politics and the duplicity of the military and political leadership of Pakistan is such that that is a fact, and that is a fact that cannot be changed, and that is a fact which partly determined the difficulty that the world faces. The main hope today is for continuing United Nations and multinational efforts by responsible countries around the world, ranging from the United States to the NATO countries and China and Russia, not to contribute, not to play games of trying to game each other and upend each other, because this will lead to nothing but destruction. And this is a condemnation of the whole world political system, and especially the imperialistic military power of Russia, and also the possibly negative consequences of China's politics. China is somewhat more competent and more responsible than Russia, but with the Russian imperialist military intervention against Ukraine, the sponsoring of proxy wars of aggression, it's difficult to see Russia playing any kind of a positive role in international politics. So let's get the story straight. Let's get world geopolitics straight, and let's condemn all of the parties, all of the factions, all of the powers that are not working towards peace. And the only ones who seem to be working towards peace are some of the members of some of the United Nations and some non-governmental organizations and human rights organizations that are independent of imperialistic governments and petty party politics. And so I will end this presentation here.